Yo, what up, friends? So we're about a week into the league, and you guys have been following along with me. You guys have enjoyed the Spectral throw build, and you've been asking what's next. Where am I going with it? How am I upgrading it? What are my plans? Am I even sticking to it? And the good news is I'm still in love with the build. I love everything about it. The build is absolutely phenomenal to play. I'm having a great league, and I'm overall having a lot, and I mean a lot of fun. We're about a week into the league. I managed to get my headhunter. I converted the build over to insta or deck stacking with a headhunter. I started playing with the headhunter earlier on stream, and then a buddy of mine was like, hey, you know, when are you gonna get the mage blood? I borrowed some money, I got a mage blood. I've been playing the build in all kinds of different fashions and testing all different things. But what I wanted to spend some time to you today was talking about my plans, where I'm going, how I'm doing it, what upgrade routes I've taken, and kind of like where I'm going with the build. And I'll share with you guys where I am, how I got there, and then I'll look at where I want it to be, and then kind of my progression and thoughts. So this is going to be like an update to where we were and how the league starter is going and where it's going to go and how we're addressing it. The first thing that we're going to point out is you'll notice, just looking at the gear with me pressing I, we have an all new set of gear. We've got a bunch of synthesized gear and what looks like fractured gear and all kinds of different things. So let's take a few minutes to talk about what's going on. The first thing we did was we replaced our claw, and we went with a claw that was shaper based. I found out after I made this that we could do a hunter based claw, and we aimed for a claw that has cold damage to attacks with this weapon per 10 dex. Now note, this claw is not optimized or optimal. This is a very basic beginner entry level claw, and the easiest way to make this is to get a shaper claw that is an imperial claw. I went for eye level 75, which you have to make, and we'll talk about in a second. And I just put Essence of Hatred into it until I hit the Dex mod. Now when I made mine, I got really lucky. I got increased critical strike chances on it, and that's perfect. And then I crafted on attack speed. So I just spammed the claw with essences. The ideal claw would still be spammed with essences, but the third prefix would be Ashlinged for penetrates cold resistance, and the suffixes would be increased critical strike chance and attack speed. So the suffixes we have now are fine, minus the poison. We don't care about the poison. Moving to the helmet, we got a Fractal Thoughts. This gives us critical strike multiplier if our dex is higher than our int. Our dex is way higher than our int. We get 15% increased dex if our strength's higher than our int, which it's not, which we're gonna work on later and fix. And we get increased elemental damage per 10 dexterity, which is huge, like huge. We have a lot of dex, and we just get a lot of damage. Now, I got my helmet with skills socketed, have a 90% cost of reservation mastery or reservation multiplier. This is so I can fit in another aura. This helmet cost me about 1 divine. Eventually, I'm going to get a lab service, and I'm going to get the sniper's mark enchant on it. The armor, brisk wrap. Brisk wrap is very basic, very entry level. It is increased damage for 15 attack. Ideally, I would like a Chayula armor that gives us attack speed per dexterity, but they're like 5 divines. I don't know how I want to craft it yet. I still need to figure out if I want to go hunter or non-hunter on it. But brisk wrap, overall really good, gives us a lot of dexterity and a lot of damage. Our rings are very basic and very simple. Since we're converting to dex stacking and we want to have as much dex as possible, we want to go with synthesized gear. We go with synthesized rings, amulets, and belts, and they're all going to follow a very similar theme. They're going to want dex and more dex and a lot of dex and yes on dex. Yes, like yes on dex. So our rings are pretty much going to be the same. We're going to get synthesized based rings that have increased dexterity. The higher the item level, depending on what you're using it for, the better. Because we're not mage blood in the current moment, our resistances overall are pretty bad, and we need to make up resistances playing a dex stacker in our suffixes, especially with where we are on the tree. We don't get a lot of resistances on the trees, so we have to do some things to jump through some hoops to get our resistances to work. So when you first start crafting this gear and making these rings, ideally what you want to do is you want to use essence. What is the essence called? That is a really good question. It is called Deafening Essence of Sorrow, and we're just going to slam sorrow essences on our rings until we get some resistances. You see my rings right now, they're not made very well. They have no life on them, crummy resistance, dexterity. The fizz attack, you do not need non-channeling skills. Ideally for rings, we would want dexterity, some other attribute, all attributes, so forth and so on. And we'll show min-max gear a little later on. My other ring, pretty much the same thing. Just slam the essences, got resistance, all attributes, crafted on non-channeling. The amulet, no different than what we've been doing so far. Essence amulet on a dex-based amulet. Resistance, just resistance is crafted on life. Very simple. Now the shield, we got very lucky. Some people want +1 frenzy charges. Some people want dex. I opted for more dex. I slammed on dex on the suffixes until I hit attack speed. Couple essences later, my shield looked like this. I wrapped it up. I called it a good day. Our gloves and boots and belt, nothing's gonna change here. Belt, dexterity. Oh my god, dude, I didn't even, oh. Nobody look. Okay. Okay. I was missing dex. Oh no. Same thing. Dex until resistance, craft on life. Now, gloves are a little interesting. I opted for fractured spell suppression, and then I used essence until I hit dex because I wanted more attack speed. A couple essences in, my gloves look like this, and I left them alone. I know there's no Eldritch Implicits on them yet. I haven't had the chance to buy Eldritch Implicits. I know I'm slacking. I will show you guys when we get to the POB what kind of Eldritch Implicits you want. So if you're at this stage in the video, you could skip ahead to the POB and it'll give you the information for Eldritch Implicits. Our boots, same story. Fraction on resistance, slam the essence for dex, get some resistance, call it a good day. The gear itself is very basic and very simple. As you start to fine tune it and move up, it gets really good. Now, if you're looking for an upgrade path, I have the POB, and we could talk about that. If you're wondering what the skill gems are, nothing in the skill gems has changed yet, as we're not at crit cap. When we get at crit cap, we move the way for the power charge Frostbomb Arcanus brand setup. That all goes away, but everything else from the first setup is exactly the same. Our weapon still has life tap support with Sniper's Mark and Mark on Hit. Our helmet has an Enlightened support. Oh, okay, the Enlightened's new. An Enlightened support, a Hatred, a Herald of Ice, and a Purity of Elements. Now, we can actually fit in Purity of Elements because the helmet has the mana reservation multiplier with the Enlightened support. Our chest plate, we're going for increased critical strike supports, added cold damage, which is awakened, inspiration, awakened elemental damage with attack support, Divergent Spectral Throw. We're later in the league now. Divergent Spectral Throw exists. It's easy to get. Nightblade support. Now, the Divergent Spectral Throw is really cool because it slows down our projectile speed and it gives us an additional projectile. Absolutely wonderful. Fantastic alt quality. Highly recommend. Our gloves is our Ancestral Protector, our Blood Rage, and our Whirling Blades, and our Precision. We're going to be accuracy cap because we're dex stacking, but we're going to use precision for increased critical strike chance. It's good. I recommend using it. In the case of Ancestral Protector, I don't have the extra strength because I have to get resistances and the suffixes. I have to give up strength in int and other places. When I get to this stuff, or when I get to the part where I can put on Mage Blood, I can actually recraft all of the gear. And once again, that's in the POB, and we'll get to see that later. The boots, we have Power Charge on crit, Frostbomb, Arcanus Brand, and Tornado. Arcanus Brand is going to cast us Frostbomb, which is going to give us exposure and stop the mob from regenerating. It's going to give us Tornado, which is going to give us an insane amount of damage, and it's going to give us a Power Charge on crit. So when the Tornado does its Tornado things and the Frostbomb does its thing, they're going to crit, give us power charges. More power charge, we get more crit. And lastly, in our shield, we have cast when damage taken and Mortal Call as a small defensive layer to help keep us alive. Pretty straightforward and pretty simple. Now, if you're wondering what the build looks like in action before we deep dive into POB, I've grabbed the map for you. It's corrupted, so I can't show you mods. That is not a thing we want. All right, we'll do this. Life is ES, bosses are possessed, power charge on hit. And to show you the Atlas tree, I was messing around with the Maven Stone. So when we go into this, it's going to have a bunch of mobs and bosses. The build itself as a mapper feels really good and really strong. It's very enjoyable. It's got really good speed on it. The clear just feels great. And I just want to note, this is without a Mage Blood. You have to press your flask to stop bleeds. That's important. That's important. There's gonna be one guy who's gonna be like, bro, you should have edited out the death, man. It looks bad now. We leave him in, boys. We show it how it is. Now, overall, this boss is ghosted and gripped, and energy shield is ES. As soon as we break the energy shield, he kind of just like flops over, no problem. Ideally, though, you want to play this as a mapping build. I've mentioned that before, and I'll mention it again. It can do bosses, especially at this stage with the gear. I was doing invitations farming earlier, and it goes pretty well, and it kind of can clear and kill everything pretty easily and pretty handily. Would I recommend playing this as like your Uber farmer? Not without more gear investment. But you can see we can handle everything in this map fairly well. Our clear speed and coverage and range is really good. We can grab an essence and just immediately die to chaos. Idiot should have edited it out. Why are you leaving the death sin? It is still prone to dying to chaos damage. Now, where's the essence mob? Where'd he go? Now, chaos damage itself is going to be a pain in the butt. Chaos itself will be resolved in one of two ways. You can sack more of your suffixes in the current setup to get chaos resistance, which is not a bad setup. You can get a different chest plate to get chaos resistance, not a bad play. Or you can just wait until you upgrade to a Mage Blood, and a Mage Blood will solve a lot of the chaos resistance problems. I know that's like a cop-out of an answer, but the easiest way to solve chaos resistance is to sack some of your resistances, or I'm sorry, to sack the gloves and put chaos resistance on the gloves. You can put chaos resistance on the rings, so you can get rid of the all attributes, put chaos resistance. You can fix up the shield for less attack speed or no regen, put chaos resistance. There are definitely places that you could put on chaos resistance in the meantime to help fix things up. But overall, when I did this and I went through it, I didn't worry too much about chaos resistance until I got to this part where I was like putting on Mage Blood. Now, if Mage Blood sounds out of league and out of rep, you know, is like, oh my God, it's the spookiest thing in the world. I understand. I'm aware. It's a costly item. It's expensive. Going to this setup in gear and progressing the build itself is going to be expensive. Eventually, these rings are going to cost you a lot to craft. All of the gear itself is going to be expensive, and you don't need a Mage Blood. You can get a Headhunter. Headhunter does really well. And if you don't want to do a Mage Blood or a Headhunter, you can just keep on the Synthesized Cloth Belt. It'll do essentially the same thing. Now, if I pull up my POB in its current state, I'm going to take out this Watcher's Eye, which we're going to talk about. If I pull up my POB in its current state, which will be attached in the video description, so you can go back and download it and put in POB and look at it, we have a couple of things going on. The first thing that you're going to notice right away is we have a massive thread of hope. This massive thread of hope allows us to get a bunch of nodes all over the place that are really good. We can get some RMR, we get some attack and movement speed, we get some projectile damage and dexterity. We just get the damage on damage and crit chance and strength. The massive thread of hope is huge. It solves a lot of issues and it picks up a lot of things. You'll notice up here, we have another jewel. We actually have the new Warrior's Tale jewel that's part of this league. This jewel increases the effect of our tattoos in the radius by 100%. And we're actually pairing this with the new tattoo of the Ramakomakanga. This says skills fires an additional projectile. And it doesn't show it in POB, but in game, because it's within radius of the tattoo, it actually gives us 2 additional projectiles. So this node, this jewel, if I show you right now, so if I take this jewel out and I attack, you'll notice we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then if I put it in and attack, we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now it's 2 projectiles here. 2 projectiles here is 4. And then 2 projectiles from Spectral Throw is 6. That is without multi-shot. Something really cool to think about. That's without multi-shot. Otherwise, the tree is pretty much the standard tree that you were copying in the POB. I took a jewel socket here for int, cold, and lightning resistance. This is going to get changed up and moved out. And then the other big thing to note about the POB is we grabbed a timeless jewel. This timeless jewel I spent 30 divines on. I have seen this timeless jewel on trade for 15 divines. I've seen this timeless jewel on trade for 5 divines, and I've seen this timeless jewel on trade for 100 divines. So it's one of those things where this timeless jewel is either going to be really cheap when you're looking at it or really expensive. Now, there is a trade link for the timeless jewel. I will show you guys how to search these timeless jewels. Now, if I put it up on trade, there's, at the time of recording, 1 listed for 20, 1 listed for 50, and 1 listed for 100, and 1 offline for 17. Now, this is denoted services 1475. If we go to our filter, we do a count of 1. We search 1475 of all the different denoted. We don't care if it's Nasima, Asanas, Bala, or Desret. We don't care which one it is. We only care about the number being 1475. Now, I said I spent 40 or 30? 30. I spent 30 on mine. This one's up for 20. This one's up for 50. This one's up for 100. I don't think it'll sell for 100. And I also don't think it'll sell for 50. My gut instinct tells me because we're playing a DEX stacker, these will come down. Simply because we're just not going to be tattooing. Now, you're going to ask me, what is so good that makes this timeless jewel 100 divines? Or 50 divines, or so expensive that I need it? Well, let's go over the nodes. So we're going to get 5% dex on Innervate. We're going to get blind chance on Force of Nature. We're going to get 5% dex on Aspect of the Links. We're going to get 5% dex on Weapon Artistry. We're going to get projectile damage on Quick Step. We're going to get critical strike chance on Intuition. We're going to get 5% dex on Herbalism, 5% dex on Acuity, crit strike chance on the Frenzy Charge, and 5% dex on Heartseeker. And then if you really want, you can actually get 5% increased attack speed on Survivalist, which is also just not bad and pretty cool. So the jewel itself is 6 5% dex nodes, 2 crit nodes, a projectile node, and a blind node. It's really, really strong. Like really, really, really strong. Like it's crazy. It's actually crazy. Now, if I look at my gear right now, I have on the brisk wrap, I have on the belt for the increased dex, I have the same claw, and all the same skills. And if I were to, I'm moving POB so you guys can see it because my face would be in the way. But if I really wanted to, and I go to skills and I wanted to take a look at my damage and I include in full DPS at a count of 3, Spectral Throw we put as a count of 3 because the skill attacks when it goes out, the skill attacks at its pinnacle, and the skill attacks on the way back, hence the count of 3. I'm doing about 4 million DPS in its current state, which it'll end up doing a lot more. Now, why does that say that? Oh, because the Frost Bomb's disabled. Let's turn the Frost Bomb back on. I was testing something earlier. So, Frost Bomb back on. Oh, enabled. That's what I want. Okay, the enemy branded. So, our damage looks like the following. We have Frenzy Charges. We will have Power Charges. We have Power Charges from the brand. We have Frenzy Charges from our tree because we gain a Frenzy Charge when we hit a marked enemy. We have Onslaught because we're going to be pressing our Onslaught Flask, but we can actually unclick this so you can feel, so, you know, because we don't always have Onslaught, but we have Onslaught while we're mapping. We have Tailwind all the time. We have Elusive all the time because we're critting. We chill the enemies, and we have projectile damage, and the enemy is a boss. So you can click on Onslaught if you want. Take off the Flask. Now you'll notice without Flask on, we're about 3 million DPS and 74% crit chance. If I turn my Flask back on, this Flask does nothing because we're already resistance capped. This Flask will give us chaos resistance when I press it, giving us positive chaos resistance. Our diamond flask, when I press it, will give us 100% crit chance, which will give us damage. And our silver flask will give us onslaught and give us more DPS. While we're bossing, we probably wouldn't have increased effect flask on. We would just have normal flask on. But while I'm mapping, I put on increased effect flask and I just kind of hit things and keep going. The flasks are really strong and really powerful. You can get away with just a different flask setup altogether. You can make one of these flasks the Azeri flask. You can get a Taste of Hate. I think a Taste of Hate is actually probably pretty good, and I want to figure out where I'm putting a Taste of Hate. I might actually get rid of this life flask and put it in a Taste of Hate. I don't know yet. We'll see. We'll see. But overall, that's the build. The build is really strong. The build is really solid. Now, I will also include a copy in the description of the POB that I am following. I have found a really good POB on POE Ninja. I've been taking ideas off of this. This gentleman, with the almost same configurations, if I take off Consecrated Ground because we don't have that. The enemy is a boss, travel distance of 50, and I go to skills and I look at Spectral Throw and I include it in the full DPS. With optimal min-maxed gear, this gentleman was at about 70 million DPS with a really good claw and stuff like this. So I'll include this guy's POB in the description and you guys can check this out and kind of get an idea of where to take the build from here. Now I'll do another update again after I manage to min-max the gear and min-max the build, but I'm just not there yet. Something I do want to point out, something that's really kind of cool that I found out while I was recording, or right before I started recording this video, is one thing I never considered. And I started recording, my buddy whispered to me, he was like, oh my God, you don't have one of these, you need one of these immediately. Is eventually I'll get a jewel socket for a Watcher's Eye. If I get a crit Watcher's Eye with a good roll, now I grabbed a poopy rolled one, I will get a ton of crit chance, like a ton. So if I have my diamond flask on and this Watcher's Eye with good crit chance, I actually get to take off increased critical strike chance, which I guess hasn't been on this entire time, and be crit capped. So I actually get to change this out for something else, which it could be increased crit multi. This guy's got bone chill. It could be cold pen. I don't know what I want it to be yet, but I'm going to test out and figure it out. So we actually get to take this out if we manage to get the Watcher's Eye. Another alternative, instead of getting Brisk Wrap, is the Chayula armor, like I mentioned, and I'll include a link to that in the video too. And you can get this Chayula armor, which you're looking for the increased attack speed per dexterity node, which is what you'd be looking for. And if you get one of these and you can annul off a suffix, so this one for 4 divines is an open suffix, you can actually put on Hunter Influence and roll this for base crit as well. So that's just another avenue and option that you guys can take as well. I think a Grasping Mail is 100% going to be the play, especially for me moving forward. I just don't know yet if it's going to be a Grasping Mail that is fractured. So something like this would be really good, but this guy wants 50 divines for this. So something like this would be really good. Or this, hit the fracture, do this with attributes. There's options. There's a ton of options. If you have questions about the armor, or you don't know where you want to go with the armor, or you just kind of want to talk about upgrade paths, please don't hesitate to come by the Discord. Don't hesitate to ping me in the comment section of this video. I know this video is running long as is, and there's a lot of options and upgrade paths and different things to talk about. But if you're lost and you're confused and you don't know what you want to do or how you want to do it, the Discord is very active. We will help. You can come by the Twitch stream. I love to talk to you guys and give you guys any advice or anything that I can give you. But overall, I'm really happy with the build. I managed, like I said, I borrowed some money to get the Mage Blood. I have a Mage Blood. I played the build with a Headhunter. Headhunter feels absolutely phenomenal. So I love it. I'm having a blast. I can't wait to upgrade it more and see how it feels with better gear on. And I hope you guys join me on this journey. For now, though, I'm going to get this video out to you guys. I have to farm to pay back the Mage Blood. So hopefully by the time you've watched this video, I've already paid back the Mage Blood and you come by and you ask and it's done. But friends, thank you for being here, and thank you for supporting me, and thank you for everything. And if you made it this far in the video, don't forget that the like, subscribe, and the share button, it helps the algorithm out greatly. And just know I appreciate you guys. Thanks for everything. See you guys in the next one. Bye, friends.